Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
But just a reminder that the people that you work with are people, whole people. They're not just their job title. They're like multifaceted. They have unique characteristics with thousands of experiences that they're bringing into the workplace every day, just like you are. And you'll benefit from just trying to understand them and learn what motivates them, what challenges them, and then you'll be able to kind of work with them in the most kind of productive way and support them to do their best.
Hello and welcome to the Career Boosters Podcast, Season 2, Episode 28. That's a lot of episodes, 28. 99 in total. A few years ago, an engineer came into our MBA program wanting to make a change, wanting to make a difference in what their career and I guess what life could look like. Well, that engineer happens to be here today to talk about empathetic leadership. I have had the pleasure of knowing Heather Braid, the manager of teaching and learning at the Alberta School of Business, for a few years now. We won't actually say how many years because it's way more than a few. And as the summer has continued on, Tiffany and I are always looking for unique guests to talk about their experience, their career pivots, their knowledge, and so much more. We can't wait to talk to Heather about how she defines empathetic leadership and how she demonstrates it. Tiffany and I are lucky enough to teach classes on emotional intelligence, and obviously empathy is a part of those classes. The tool that we both use and are both certified in is something called EQI 2.0. It looks at empathy as recognizing, understanding, and appreciating how others feel. Empathy involves being able to articulate your understanding of another person's perspective and behaving in a way that respects other people's feelings. So Heather, let's jump in with the first question. Tell us a bit about your career journey, your role at the Alberta School of Business, and how your MBA impacted your career journey.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, as you said, I started out as an engineer. So I did civil environmental engineering. So then once I graduated from that, I started working in waste management with the city of Edmonton, which I loved. But as I was doing work, I kind of wanted to work with people a bit more, and I saw what we were doing here in Edmonton through the city was really forward thinking, and I decided I kind of wanted to get more into waste consulting or sustainability consulting. So I have a funny story. I did an interview for a position in that field. And in the interview, they were asking me like, oh, well, how do you build your network? And in my head, I was like, ew, networking, like gross. That's a business thing. I'm not a business person. So I don't remember exactly how I answered the question, but needless to say, I did not get the position. But it just made me realize like, okay, I actually should probably look into how do organizations work if I'm going to be doing any consulting with them. So I decided to go back to school to do my MBA. And at the time there was a sustainability specialization at the Alberta School of Business here. So I entered that, and it was I learned all about how organizations work. It was incredibly eye-opening. And then through the sustainability specialization too, I learned more about nonprofits and social enterprises and things like that. And I really just realized like that's where I want to focus my career or energy, like using business as a force for good. So when I graduated, I got a position at MacEwan University, and it was project manager for the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. And that was perfect because it was space kind of design and then also program design. So it kind of fit both my engineering and my new MBA background. And I also just really enjoyed working at an academic institution. I felt really at home there. I loved like that my work was serving students and like forward thinking and education and learning. So I really enjoyed that. And then I worked there for about 5 years, and then the position came up here to be the manager. It was a new office at the time, the Office of Education. So I took a little bit of a leap and applied and got the job. So I've been doing this for about 4 years now. So yeah, my job as the manager of the Office of Education, our office is really about continuously improving the programs and student experience at the school, helping maintain high quality of the program and relevancy, like relevancy to society, and just making sure the students are kind of graduating prepared to learn. So that I would say that's kind of the main summary of our office, which I know many other offices work on similar things. But yeah, we have instructor teaching and learning supports. We work on the school's accreditation through this international body. We have Indigenous student supports in our office, and then we coordinate the Biz series of courses, which are similar to the classes that you and Tiffany teach, but for the Bachelor of Commerce program. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I was thinking about, okay, how did my MBA kind of impact me this journey? Mm-hmm. And I think the best way I could think about it is it really helps you look at your role in kind of a more holistic way. Like you just have a better understanding of where your role fits in to the big picture. So like, how does your budget impact the overall budget? Yeah. What return on investment are you bringing to the organization? Like, how can you be a good team member and leader? And thinking about like understanding the overall strategy and how your role or part of the organization fits into that, and like communicating the value of your work and that kind of thing. So it really just kind of puts that all into context, which I think is really important.
That's so cool. When I think about, you go back to that interview that you had and they said, how do you build your network? You talked about all of the technical and tactical parts of how the MBA helped you. But I almost guarantee that you learned what the word networking is and how to have like networking conversations and why a network is important, right? And I know that, from our perspective, we get to guest lecture in some of the Biz series of classes and know and understanding that we all have a same goal in mind of really trying to help students and help students be as successful as possible. It's so cool that an office like yours exists. And it's really awesome. What do you think? I've been asking people a lot about just what they enjoy about whatever they're doing. So what's the thing you like most about working for the School of Business? And then I'll hand it over to Tiffany for the next question.
I think kind of going back to what I said about working at an academic institution, I love learning. I'm a learner according to my Clifton strengths. But yeah, I just love kind of being surrounded by learning, helping other people achieve what they want to do in the world, which I know you both do all the time with your work. I think that's kind of my favorite thing.
I love that. The part I want to highlight under what you just said and everything how you've got here is the networking. Ew, gross. And I chuckle because I think that's the inner experience of you just put words to it and you were willing to be honest with, how you felt about it. I think that's, but then your journey to figuring out that it's actually not ew, gross, and that you can have a lot of empathy within networking, which is what we're kind of here to chat about. And I think you're a really interesting person to talk about empathy and leadership and how you lead, because if we talk about stereotypes, which we know are not always true, but if we talk about stereotypes about engineers, they are not the most stereotypically empathetic people. And so I am going to love listening to kind of what empathy means to you. Did it exist when you were an engineer? Is it just part of your DNA, Heather's DNA, and you wove it into engineering and leadership? Would be curious for me. But let's just even start with, how do you define just empathy and leadership? Because I think we all define it a little different.
Sure. Yeah, I think empathy just for me comes down to being able to sense other people's feelings. And then in a way you start to also feel it too. And it's sometimes can be even before they really put words to it or express it themselves. Like you kind of just have that sense of understanding, like being able to feel what they're feeling. And yeah, I was thinking of describing it kind of as imagining yourself in their situation, which it is, but I do kind of want to be cautious about that a little bit because you really don't know what life experiences other people have had and you don't want to assume. So it is about trying to do that, but it's not, you have to do a little bit more work, I think, and like ask questions and maybe like do your homework a little bit more related to that.
If I can expand on something you said, and I might pass it to Paul because Paul often talks about the difference of being in somebody else's shoes, and he's got a beautiful metaphor to kind of build on that. But you talked about sensing other people's feelings. And when I work with leaders around empathy, I think there's actually a bit of a fear because some people can't sense it. You are a
Right.
beautiful human that has this ability to kind of feel the feelings from others. And I sometimes look on leaders' faces and they're like, I don't sense anything. And right, I'm broken, right? Like something's wrong with me as a human. And so to understand that there's different kinds of empathy, and I think the type that you're talking about is very much a sensing, a feeling, an intuition based. But that for those people that aren't practiced in that or don't have that, there's also cognitive empathy. And we call that perspective taking, the ability to like think through how someone might feel, even if you can't feel it, is another type of empathy. I don't think it's the one that you experience, but it is out there.
Yeah, exactly.
There are
But
so
Paul,
there are so many different ways to kind of express and work through empathy. It's something, I find it interesting with MBA students in particular. We have a plethora of people that are like in this EQI 2.0 assessment on the very low end of that. And that just means exploration and what it means. To the higher end, it's like, how do I create this as like a superpower for myself? But there's also being over empathetic, like too much empathy, right? And so it's about finding that space and time that works for you. The metaphor that Tiffany was talking about, I think we all know that Paul loves shoes. So I talk about this very interesting. I look at empathy as it's not me putting my feet in their shoes. It's I put my shoes beside theirs and I just listen and I just be curious to what's going on for them. And I think what's most important to me about that is just not worrying about myself and just purely listening to somebody and a simple statement that like something like that sounds really difficult for you, like something like that just for me is what a definition of empathy kind of looks like, which I think that's when we teach our classes, that's what we kind of go through and we all experience it differently, right? So I get to ask the next question.
Okay.
So Heather, who is a leader that you look up to that you feel exemplifies what it means to lead with empathy?
Yeah, so actually, Tiffany and I were just kind of messaging about this, and when I brought up this topic, she brought up Jacinda Ardern right away, who's the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, who led through initially like the shooting in Christchurch and then the COVID-19 pandemic. And her kind of platform was lead with kindness, and she always led with empathy and kindness. And she's just so incredible. I look up to her so much. But one thing that really stands out to me about her as well is she's not afraid to back down from what she believes in. Like she's so strong. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily put that strong strength commitment to your like decisions and choices with empathy, but I think she's just a great example of how they can kind of go together.
Her memoir is called A Different Kind of Power. And she talks about the power of empathy and how that is truly a leadership strength. Yes, I really enjoy her too. Is there anybody that you, in addition to her, is it within your sphere?
I was thinking about this too. And yeah, I was kind of thinking, I don't know if this is like corny to say, but the leaders that I've worked most closely with in the school, so Leo, Wong, Michelle, Innes, and Trish Ray, I was thinking about them. And they demonstrate empathy on a daily basis. And I can see all the time how much they care about, like, not just me, but the students, like other people in the school, the whole school. And it makes me feel a great kind of trust with them and sense of safety. And yeah, like they've noticed when I'm overwhelmed or something, and like we've been able to work through it together. And yeah, I can definitely see all of them putting the people first, knowing like that's where the good work comes from. And it helps me be empathetic in my leadership, because then I feel like I can do that too. And I have like kind of the trust that the decisions that I'm making, they might make similar ones if they were in my shoes or next to my shoes. Yeah, and it's also a little bit corny, but I was just thinking too, like our school's slogan or whatever is called uplift each other, and I think they so demonstrate that, and then it helps me be able to kind of demonstrate it as well.
So if they model empathy and leadership to you on a daily basis, how do you model empathy to others? How does it show up for you in your day-to-day leadership?
I think if we were talking practically, it might be a little bit different response. But when I was thinking about like practically demonstrating empathy, I did see some things that I do on a daily basis that I think it's kind of like structurally, but it allows me to be empathetic, if that makes sense. So one of the things that I've done is set routine one-on-one meetings with all of the people that report to me. And it's not just to talk about their projects or tasks, but more of it can be about that for sure, but it's also just more of a check-in about how the person's doing, like how's their work going a little bit more generally. Just trying to check in with them, like what's going tricky, what maybe do you need more support for, that type of thing. And I found that building this into the routine just makes it so easy for somebody to feel comfortable bringing things up when they need to. They don't have to reach out to set an appointment with me when something comes up, so it reduces that barrier. And I find like then we're able to kind of catch things maybe before they become a bigger stress or a bigger concern. So I think it does mean that I have the time kind of in my calendar meeting with them every week, but I wouldn't change it. Like it's always been so valuable to have.
It's such a great like practical tool to use to like check in with your people. It could, you know, if you just went out and said like I have weekly meetings with everybody, somebody could look at that and be like, whoa, this person has like way more meetings than they probably should. But you are creating a space that allows people to show up in the way that they need to in those moments. And it's like, you know, I come from a place of like loving autonomy and loving kind of space and time. And I still get bi-weekly meetings with, you know, my supervisor, and it always starts with like, how are you doing? What is going on? Like, and I think it's so important to ask those questions, because I think going back to what you said kind of towards the start, it's like people could be going through things and they maybe aren't sharing anything, but if they know that they have that space, then, and you create that space for them, they can feel very safe in that environment to share maybe what's going on. Then you can understand if something's a little late, maybe something's come up, and it gives you just like a pulse or a tone of what's kind of happening for you and your team. And I think that to me is like that just exemplifies what great kind of leaders are doing, because I think too often you can have your weekly meeting. It's like, how many phone calls did you make? How many projects did you finish?
Yeah.
And if it's not about that, it's a wonderful check-in on just a human. And that's a wonderful human or people skill to have.
Yeah, exactly. And I find it's been really valuable too with the hybrid work environment. Yeah. Just to know, like, no matter what, we have this half an hour every week. Yeah. We'll see each other, like whether it's virtually or in person. Yeah. Yeah. And then another thing that I actually did last summer too, which I think has been helpful, is I have actually set time in my calendar for where I don't have any meetings. So every day I have blocked off like 8 to 10 a.m. And I tried as much as possible to not book meetings there, because I was just finding for a period of time I had back-to-back meetings every day, all day, and I was like burnt out and kind of not feeling like I was approachable. Yeah. So yeah, I started blocking that off, and then it's been like I've been less stressed. The team knows they'll be able to get a quick answer from me. Yeah. I've been able to like just keep up to date kind of on my tasks a bit more, because I have that time blocked. And I've also found I haven't really felt like I've had to put meetings off too long either. Like it hasn't, I kind of was wondering if it would feel like, oh, well, I have to book meetings like 3 or 4 weeks in advance. It hasn't really felt like that.
Yeah.
So
What's cool about that, Heather, is that you are almost showing empathy towards yourself as well, giving the space and time to yourself to show up as the best version of Heather for your team as well. And it's, I get that you can get the task done, but having that white space cleared for yourself is a beautiful gift to self as well. When we think about misconceptions people have about this empathetic leadership style, what are some of those misconceptions that you think that could be present?
yeah, I was thinking for this one, I think sometimes when you think about, empathy, I think I was mentioning this with Jacinda Ardern. Maybe they're not like strong, or one thing I was thinking of is you don't have the ability to make hard decisions or have hard conversations. And to be honest, like it is more natural for me to want to avoid causing people distress, as I'm sure it is for most people. But I've just been trying to reflect on that and trying to not avoid it and kind of hit it head on. And when I actually take the time to think about when hard decisions or hard conversations are needed, you kind of see it's not doing anybody any favors avoiding it. It's better to like address it and learn from it. And especially, if you're maybe having a challenge with somebody, it is hard to bring that up. But often when you work through it, you actually have a better relationship in the end. Like you kind of have built trust between the two of you kind of working through it. And you can use empathy as a tool in those conversations.
I love that. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around empathy, for sure. And I want to point back to a little bit of brain science because I've been recently doing some research around burnout. When we burn out, we lose access to the part of our brain that actually allows us to be empathetic. So when we probably need empathy the most to ourselves and to others, when we end up overloaded and stressed out, we actually don't have access to that toolkit within our brain anymore. And I find that really interesting. We need it the most and we lose it. And so kudos to you for holding the space for yourself so that you keep access to all those skills that you have. But I have to imagine it's not always easy. Empathy, I have to think, isn't always easy. When's it hard?
Yeah, I think just like what you were just saying, you can get burnout and situations do weigh very heavily on me because I'm feeling the other's feelings along with my own feelings. And I do feel a sense of responsibility to want to fix it, which is it's not always appropriate and you can't always do that. And then also I find it's difficult for me if I feel like I'm the reason why somebody maybe is experiencing some kind of negativity. It weighs very heavily on me, and I have very guilt. Like I get high feelings of guilt in those situations, and then again, it just kind of comes back to I need to show empathy and kindness to myself at those times. Like everybody's not perfect, and people can't always avoid feeling negative, and just have to kind of trust that what I've done was the right thing and we'll be able to kind of work past it.
Yeah. The thing I want to just point to, Heather, is like you're demonstrating like a high level of emotional intelligence, right? It's like I'm feeling this guilt, and you can still feel guilt and walk through something with somebody, right? You can still feel I have to be in kind of conflict with this person, or like there's a tension, but we can still maneuver through. And like that to me just really speaks to a level of emotional intelligence that I think, if you look at all of the research that's done, it's like as we reach, from an age perspective, our like middle to late 30s, 40s, 50s, we're kind of like peaking from like an emotional intelligence standpoint. And I find that as you kind of get more experience under your belt, you kind of understand like where and how that emotional intelligence and in this case kind of empathy kind of shows itself, which is so cool. I feel like we could sit here and talk for like hours and hours, but we can't. So I'm going to ask one final question, and then I'm going to throw it over to Tiffany to do the lightning round. But what would you want kind of an MBA student, or really any student for that matter, stepping into their first leadership role to understand about empathy that kind of like, most leadership courses don't really teach us?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. I was just thinking it is about, like you said, putting yourself beside somebody else's shoes, considering it from their perspective. Just remembering that it's not always about being nice. Sometimes like the nice thing or what might be nice to hear isn't uh, what's needed in that moment. And being considerate maybe is delivering a hard message or having a difficult conversation. And in the end, it can often be a win-win in the end. So yeah, being empathetic doesn't equal being nice necessarily. And then I was just going to say too, this might sound simple, but just a reminder that the people that you work with are people, whole people. They're not just their job title. They're like multifaceted. They have unique characteristics with thousands of experiences that they're bringing into the workplace every day, just like you are. And you'll benefit from just trying to understand them and learn what motivates them, what challenges them, and then you'll be able to kind of work with them in the most kind of productive way and support them to do their best.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate those thoughts and those words. And to your point, they sound simple. They sound simple. They aren't. This is the complexity and the messiness of humanity, being human, which is tough. I want to pop in a reference before we go. Do you know Kristen Bell, the actress Kristen Bell? She did a podcast recently, and it was a live on stage podcast at Wharton, I think, with Adam Grant. And they talked a lot about emotions. She is a fascinating person on her understanding and work within emotions and emotional intelligence and within herself. Maybe we can find it and put it in the show notes, because she talked about what you just said. She talked about she struggles with not knowing where her emotions end and your emotions start.
Okay.
And how that can be tough with empathy, that blending of yours and mine, and how do I put a boundary on mine and what's yours. And so you might enjoy that podcast, but
yes, for sure. I will definitely check it out.
All right, let's do a lightning round. 3 quick questions, 3 gut answers. You ready?
Yes.
Perfect. What part of your career story has given you the biggest boost?
Taking the leap to apply for this position.
Love it. What do you wish you'd learned sooner?
What I need to do to recharge my own battery.
And service is a key part of just Paul and I as humans. And so we always like to hear how service is going to show up for you in the coming week.
I'm cheating, and I'm going to say this is something I did on Monday. I volunteer for the Edmonton Community Foundation, which is incredible. I'm on one of their granting subcommittees. So we had a chairs meeting on Monday.
And that's technically still this week. I said coming week, but that's this week. So
yeah.
Nicely done. All right, Paul's up. What's your random question for Heather?
Heather, I find myself when I sit here and think about like a random question that I can come up with, I usually go to like, okay, so we've learned about the topic that we brought you here for, but we sometimes don't get to learn too much about the person. And I know, you have lots of different hobbies, activities, running around with little people, all of those kinds of things. What is a great recharge thing, but just for Heather? What recharges your battery?
My favorite thing to do to recharge is go for a walk. I live really close to the Mill Creek Ravine. So going for a walk in the ravine, just being in nature, and usually listen to a podcast. So
Nice.
to pull up the Kristen Bell one or listen to another episode of Career Boosters.
I love it. I know, picturing you walking through Mill Creek listening to us in your ears.
I have, actually.
Oh, you are so kind. I love it. You talked earlier on, I wrote it down. There was this sentence that you really wanted to understand and use business as a force for good. And I want to expand that, because I think Heather is a force for good. And I think the empathy and leadership that you show and demonstrate, that you see in others, that you use as inspiration, but that you bring to your team. And for you specifically, when you bring it to your team, that means it ends up in students and colleagues. Like the ripple effect of you as a leader out into the entire ecosystem of the School of Business is a force for good. And I think it's perhaps we go back to, what do people not understand about empathy? I think it's misunderstood how powerful a force for good that empathetic leadership can be. So thank you for being that example. Thank you for demonstrating and showing and proving what Paul and I preach about all the time, that human skills are so impactful and they're so needed. And I think now more than ever, they're needed more than a lot of the technical skills that we spend time on. So thank you for bringing empathy here with us, but into all that you do, because it's powerful.
Well, thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. Oh boy, this is a deep topic, and it's one actually I'd love to do a series on, like empathy in leadership, empathy in career, like how does empathy and emotional intelligence show up? And so I love her framing around all of this. But I'm going to pull out when she talked about the practice of holding space for herself. Because if she doesn't hold space for herself, she actually can't be as empathetic as she needs to be and wants to be as a human and as a leader. And I think we go about trying to be good leaders. We go about it backwards, actually. We think we need to do more, and we think we need to be perfect. And what I love is her demonstration that no, actually, I need to hold white space for myself, because from a brain science perspective, it means that I have access to my entire brain and nervous system. My whole body is online so that I can be the best human for somebody else. And gosh darn, what would happen in leadership if we blocked some more time for ourselves? And she's a beautiful demonstration of that in action.
Mm-hmm. I love that comment. And I will also say that, like, these are areas that we probably try to work on as much as possible, right? And with sometimes very little success, at least on my end. So
we're human too.
Yeah, we are human for sure. What really stood out for me, like, she talked about, we have some great leadership in our School of Business, and the people running this place demonstrate and show high levels of emotional leadership and emotional kind of intelligence, and that trickles down, that word of it, just like water falls down to everybody else. And at the end of the day, if we think about it, our major stakeholder being students, they see that. And so it will trickle through the Office of Education. I know that our Careers and Work Integrated Learning team demonstrates those qualities all the time. And at the end of the day, the real winners for that, yes, it's the people who work here, but it's also the students. And hopefully they get to see that and go from there. So.
And the other side of that trickles down too, right? Empathy and empathetic leadership trickles down and inspires. Poop also trickles down and ripples out. And so, like, how can we combat that and trickle down the right stuff, which is really cool. Good conversation. All right, we have a big episode, the next episode. It is big in a few ways. It's our season ender, and we're going to take the summer off. And Paul's doing it the right way around. It's episode 100. 100! Like triple digits. Where'd that yeah, I don't know how that happened, but here we are. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a fun I know it's going to be a fun conversation. Cool. All right, take care and see you then. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.